What are we looking at tomorrow when the board meets as regards gTLDs?
Well, thank you, and thank you everybody that's here in person and on the phone for taking time to discuss this. For me, it's a very interesting topic, of course. So the board has spent the last year and a half analyzing public comment and the issues associated with the launch of new top-level domains, and very specifically dived into the issues that have been raised by the community. That continues this week. That guidebook, the guide for those who want to apply for a new top-level domain, has been published in a proposed final form, and there's been a public comment forum open leading up to this meeting and during this meeting that the public is using to voice comments to the board and use as a discussion forum for the rest of the community. The board is actively monitoring that dialogue and those comments, and will use those comments right up until the board meeting to have a discussion at the board meeting on Friday and determine next steps for the new TLD program and determine what are the prerequisites for launching it.
Kurt, is it an oversimplification to say that the board will be considering the manner and the timing of a launch rather than whether or not gTLDs are going to happen? It's a given that they're going to happen, or is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, so ICANN is a complicated place, so simplifications are dangerous, and the board has a wide range of options open to it. And, we'll, as I said, we'll determine the prerequisites for launch, and those prerequisites will have to be satisfied before the process is launched.
And can you tell us any marked differences in the latest, most recent draft of the applicant guidebook?
So the current version of the guidebook really addresses refinements to the process. So we continue to analyze comment and continue to make analyze it and make accommodations where those accommodations are indicated. So there's more protections for geographical names or names protected by treaty organizations. There's more malicious conduct mitigation measures through refined background checks. Processes are detailed more, so applicants have more certainty about what their requirements are and how they can pass the process. So I would term the changes to the guidebook to be refinements, improvements suggested by the community, and efforts to provide more clarity for those who want to apply.
Question from an online journalist online. The decision to move forward with new gTLDs was taken over 2 years ago. Why has it taken so long to get to this point?
Well, I think a feature and a bug of the ICANN system is that we want to ensure that we've addressed public comment. We have this bottom-up multi-stakeholder model, and we want to ensure that all those who are interested in participating in making internet policy or implementing that policy get to be heard. And even though there are some latecomers to the process, those latecomers bring real value and real improvements, and it doesn't make sense for ICANN to ignore valuable comments like that. So it's not like a regulatory agency where a comment is cut off at a certain period of time and a decision's made, but rather ICANN seeks to listen to the whole community and make improvements.
Can you outline the steps that ICANN has taken to prep for the launch of new gTLDs?
ICANN has done a lot of work both on the gTLD, both on the DAG as well as in operations to prepare for this. We have done a lot of work on getting the systems ready to be able to accept applications, both on in the online system as well as with the planning and the processes put in place to get the applications processed and then get all of the different aspects of the DAG implemented. We are our operational readiness is in lockstep with the DAG, and we will make sure that the launch of the DAG happens with as soon as ICANN board votes on that to take place.
What has happened this week at this meeting with regards to new gTLDs and their potential launch?
Lots. We've had several sessions on new gTLDs that where the members of the ICANN and Internet communities raised, came to the microphone and made several points. We had one session to discuss the so-called overarching issues. These overarching issues were raised after the first version of the guidebook was published, as you pointed out, or was pointed out in the question some time ago, and concerned that, we're concerned that trademark protections, mitigation of malicious conduct measures, economic studies, and the stability of the root zone were all considered in the guidebook. And in that interim, this community came together and developed solutions for all those issues, or work was done on all those issues. And through the community, many of those issues we think are solved, or very, very, very close to being solved. So we had a session on those overarching issues to determine what, if any, issues were outstanding or additional improvements could be made. On some other working groups met on other issues with the guidebook having to do with making IDNs more usable. So improvements could be made there in the way new gTLDs and especially IDNs operate when they are launched in the new gTLD process. And so I think that, and then finally what we see is, the strong voices coming up that wish to use this opportunity as we get close to launching to move the guidebook. So rather than comment really sort of diminishing towards the end to a whimper and then the guidebook being launched, we see it instead it raising to a crescendo as all the parties who have legitimate interest and are acting very rationally seek to press their interests and needs just before the guidebook is approved and launched.
Once the board signs off on new gTLD launch, effectively, when are we going to see new gTLDs online?
The process is actually pretty lengthy, and the way that the process is laid out, applications will start to get accepted about 4 to 5 months after the decision is made, so that we can bring the operations online and the acceptance of the application starts. After that, there is a period where the applications will stop being accepted and start being processed. So we expect, if everything goes well, about 9 months later to see the 9 months. About 9 months after the application window opens, to start seeing new gTLDs approved.
Any best guess as to the initial number of applicants once the application process is opened up?
What we've said in public before is about 500 plus or minus 400. And so seeking to indicate the uncertainty associated with the number of applications we're going to get. A year or so ago, we did some preliminary studies into the marketplace and thought there might be 200 applications from those, within the existing DNS community without considering brand holders or IDNs. The economy has gone in all different directions since then, so the environment's become very uncertain. I don't know the URLs, but there's a couple domains out there that list the numbers of applications that have been made, the number of entities that have made public that they intend to file for applications, and the list is about 135 now, or something like that, of publicly known ones.
Kurt, there's been a lot of concern expressed by trademark groups about the issues specifically surrounding trademark intellectual property protections. How have you addressed this?
I'll bet dimes to nickels. The questioner knows quite a bit about this, but I'll go through some of the background anyway. That issue was raised after ICANN published the first version of the guidebook. That in fact the approved policy had called out specifically that no specific rights protection mechanisms should be required of all TLDs. But responding to public comment, ICANN convened a group of intellectual property experts within the ICANN community to develop a set of rights protection mechanisms, and they worked really hard and developed a very concrete, reasonable product, a suite of intellectual property protections that are now in the agreement. That product was then tested to see if it was in line with the policy recommendations when it was considered by a working group of GNSO constituencies. So we have developed a suite of intellectual property protection mechanisms that are in the guidebook. There's a lot of debate still, though, about aspects of those property protection mechanisms, the timing of them, certain ways they're implemented, and whether they will result in the realization, whether they'll result in the sort of protections envisioned when they developed. There's a question as to the effectiveness of those property protection mechanisms, because until we launch the process, we will not know. We will not know whether how effective they are. And then finally, in testing their effectiveness, I think the largest area of discussion here has been around defensive registrations and the amount brand holders will have to invest in making multiple registrations across top-level domains. There's that discussion goes from one side, multiply the number of defensive registrations now by the number of new top-level domains, and you get to a pretty big number. And on the other side, that's mitigated by the fact that defensive registrations are only made in the very largest registries. So will new top-level domains result in actual defensive registrations is uncertain. And so that's the span of discussion that's occurring right now.
How did you come up with the $185,000 application fee? What's the background on that number?
It's a cost recovery model, and it has three aspects to it. One is how much is it going to cost to evaluate the applications. So we took all of the panels. I think there's 6 evaluation panels in the initial evaluation. So paying all of those evaluation panels. And then there's potential for extended review. There's potential for administration of other processes after that, such as dispute resolution, and burdening that. So we added all those costs together. Still somewhat speculative because we haven't done that yet, but pretty much those costs add up to flat up against our budget. And then there's 2 other aspects of the fee. One is a recovery of development costs, that it was thought that existing registrants should not have to pay for the development of new TLDs when others might benefit from that. So we're going to recover the development costs at the rate of $26,000 per application, $25,000 until those costs are recovered. And then finally, there's so-called risk costs of $60,000 per application. They're not exactly risk costs. What we did is we hired a competent insurer, Willis, to undertake a study with us where we identified all of the low probability, high value bad things that could happen, and calculated the value of those, and that came out to $60,000. So a very low probability in each application of a lawsuit resulting, a low probability of a security breach, a low probability, very low probabilities times high cost, added those together. So those are costs that are actually expected. We won't know for, 2-3 years, whether whether we were on with those cost calculations or not. But so at the end of the day, it's a cost recovery model, and it's pretty much calculated down to a break even without cushion beyond that.